Tales from a Jurassic World, Season 2, Episode 5, The Prehistoric Era. With Bioin now in full control of dinosaur containment operations across the United States, and with the company also having increased involvement in missions across the globe, it was becoming clear to Morrison and Brown that the early days of responding to encounters in the wild were rapidly changing. The response of the US Fish and Wildlife Service was now largely governed by the oversight of the genetics company, with Howard King responsible for assigning risk levels on operations and allocating appropriate assets to respond. This had meant that in recent weeks, the duo of agents had found themselves given a plethora of mundane and uninteresting tasks. There had been whispers amongst the service of new dinosaurs appearing in the wild, animals which hadn't been on the infamous InGen list, but these rumours were vehemently denied by Bioin. Now, the duo was sat in their truck, awaiting their next assignment from King.
I can't believe how quickly everything has changed,
Brown said, looking across the car park they were parked in as a mother helped a child into a car seat.
I know. Bioin in charge of our operations. Who would have guessed? I don't know about you, but I don't trust King.
I'm not sure about him, but we have to do what he says, Ben. Whether we like it or not, Congress voted for this. Bioin is in control now.
That they are.
Morrison responded, a slightly bleaker tone in his voice. At that moment, the radio unit in the centre of the truck buzzed into life, and Morrison and Brown grimaced slightly as the familiar voice of Howard King came over the system.
Morrison, Brown, this is King. Please respond.
This is Brown.
Agent Brown, the California Department of Parks and Recreation have reported that a group of mountain bikers have had an encounter with the Stegosaurus herd. Rangers are still caught up with some other tasks, so have asked if we can spare someone to investigate. The nearest Bioin team are still working on containing a Metracanthosaurus, which stumbled into a local junkyard. So, I'd like you and Morrison to respond.
Copy that. Any idea of the nature of the encounter?
Reports said the animals are fairly docile. I think there are a couple of injuries, but there shouldn't be anything too serious. I expect a report within the hour. King out.
Brown placed the microphone unit back in its mount and let out a sigh. It was frustrating feeling like they had no ownership over what was going on. Since Bioin had taken over operations, there was a lot more happening behind closed doors, and there was an unnerving sense that there was something amiss about the operation. The agency had presented themselves as well informed and ready to deal with this situation, having bred their own animals and their facility in the Dolomites mountain range, but something felt off. The company had seemed overly familiar with InGen's technology, and in a world that was rife with corporate espionage, Brown had a feeling that there was more to it. Still, the US Fish and Wildlife Service had been positioned to be a resource for the genetics company to use, and whether for better or for worse, that was exactly what was happening now.
I don't trust King,
Brown said after a few moments, noticing Morrison's grip tighten on the steering wheel.
I don't either, but Bioin's involvement in this may not be a bad thing. We could have easily met our demise at Big Rock, and things haven't gotten easier since then.
You're right. Something just feels off. Between the facility in the Dolomites and the new facilities Bioin has opened across the US, it just feels like they knew this was coming. Almost like they played a part in it.
Lucy, we know how this started. We were at Lockwood Manor, remember?
I know. Something doesn't feel right, though. That was a handful of animals. What's happened since then feels like an explosion. There is something else going on.
Well, whatever it is, Bioin is going to help us stop it.
After a few minutes of driving, Morrison and Brown eventually pulled into one of the car parks for the Redwoods National Park. The trees around them were towering and imposing. tall titans which reached towards the sky, canopies of leaves intermingling in a way which shielded the ground below from the sunshine. The crimson-tinged bark of the trees was thick with lines and creases, markings which told stories thousands of years old. Morrison couldn't think of anywhere more appropriate for the dinosaurs to find a new home. He and Brown stepped out of the vehicle, walking around to the tailgate and removing their tranquilizer rifles as they did a final couple of checks on them. They then shouldered the weapons and began to head deeper into the park, dirt and leaves crunching under their boots as they did so. The scale of the trees around them was insane, with the large trees towering above them as they walked past. Morrison smiled as he caught Brown looking upwards, her mouth agape in awe. The trees were a powerful reminder of the sheer power nature possessed, something which the dinosaurs had only reinforced in recent months. As they ventured further into the park, they came across some smaller trees which appeared to have been trampled, logs now lying across the floor horizontally amidst torn leaves and other vegetation. Morrison motioned for them to stop for a moment, taking in the scene as he noticed a trail of animal prints leading through the middle of the trampled space and into the woodland beyond. Alongside the tracks he could see a series of thin lines embedded, presumably tracks from bicycles.
Looks like we're going the right way.
This must have been a whole herd.
Let's find them.
As Morrison and Brown continued further into the trees, eventually they came across the scene which had been reported. In the middle of a group of imposing redwoods, a few dirt mounds were found, with tracks and trails snaking over and between them and deeper into the woods beyond. A group of young mountain bikers were stood around the area, bikes on the floor as two of them crouched over one of their friends. His bike was twisted and mangled, the metal frame contorted at unnatural angles. His leg was bloodied, and he cried out in pain as Morrison and Brown got closer. Around them they could see lots of equipment which the group had brought with them, including camera equipment like GoPros. Morrison made a mental note to get the footage from them as soon as he could, and waved at the group as a couple of the men turned around to look at him.
Hey, are you the medics?
One of them asked, a worried tone in their voice.
Not quite, son. I'm Agent Ben Morrison with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is Lucy Brown.
We've been sent on behalf of Bioin Genetics. We understand you had an encounter with some dinosaurs?
Encounter? It was terrifying. One minute, we were hitting the trail hard, and the next one of those massive ones with the plates on the back had struck Dave's bike with its tail, man, sending him flying.
One of the other bikers said.
The ones with plates. Do you mean Stegosauruses, Chad?
Another of the group added, mocking the man.
Shut up!
He bit back, turning to face the agents.
Can you help our friend?
Let me take a look and I'll see what I can do.
Morrison said, motioning for the man to lead him over to his friend. Morrison moved over towards the man who was lying on the floor, his sporting wear rolled up to reveal a bloodied leg. As Morrison knelt down to take a closer look, the man cried out in pain again, and Morrison noticed that his leg was twisted at a slight angle. Deciding that the man's leg was probably broken, Morrison got to his feet and pulled his radio off of his belt, bringing it up to his mouth.
King, this is Morrison. We've got one person with a broken leg, cannot move without medical support. Looks like he was struck by a Stegosaurus' tail spike. Over.
Ouch. Local EMS is en route. Might take them some time to get to you. Can you use your mobile to drop a GPS marker so I can share it with them?
Copy that. Morrison out.
Morrison clipped the radio back onto his belt and reached into his pocket, pulling out his mobile phone. He pinged a marker to his position on the map app he opened, and then shared it with King's number before pocketing the phone again. He turned back to Lucy, who was walking over to join him after reviewing some of the footage the bikers had been able to capture.
Looked painful. He decided to try and jump across one of the stegosaurs as they passed through, but clearly it felt threatened. Struck out with its tail and caught him as he was midair, sending him flying. Surprised it's only the leg that's messed up.
EMS are on the way. If I stay with them, do you think you could follow the trail and find where the stegosaurs ended up?
Sure thing. Leave it to me.
She said, unslinging her tranquilizer rifle.
I'll call you if I need you.
Be safe out there.
Morrison said, turning and crouching back down next to the injured biker. Brown nodded and then proceeded to follow the trail of Stegosaurus prints which led deeper into the forest. As she moved through the trees and undergrowth, it was a strange experience, a mixture of terror with awe and wonder, given the way this natural paradise was basked in golden sunshine. She had dealt with enough animals to know that something as blissful as this could easily turn deadly, however, so she kept her wits about her. As she moved further down the track, she could hear twigs and branches snapping around her, and movement in the undergrowth. She raised her rifle, scanning around the woodland, when a shape emerged from the undergrowth and directly onto the path in front of her.
Whoa, don't shoot!
Emerging onto the trail, Brown could see a young woman with a smashed camera wrapped around her neck, and cuts and bruises up her arms and in her torn cargo pants. As she looked at the woman, she could see that there was a look of fear across her face, so she lowered the rifle and spoke softly to her.
Are you okay?
I was following them, trying to get a picture. I must have spooked them because they looked like they were going to charge. I turned to run, but tripped and fell down the hillside, and, well, you can see how that went.
You're okay now. Where did you see them last?
It looked like they were heading for the river.
Okay, I will find them. Follow the trail back, and you'll find my friend with a group of bikers. He'll help to get you out of here.
Thank you.
Brown parted ways with the woman, continuing to follow the trail until she could hear the sound of water in the distance, alongside the occasional sound of some splashing and some vocalizations which were the telltale sign of a group of stegosaurs being nearby. Creeping through the undergrowth so as not to disturb the animals, she knew she was getting closer, the sounds of the animals becoming louder and more encompassing as she got closer to the edge of the tree line. Creeping out from the trees and onto a small beach-like area covered in shingle and small rocks, she crouched down, looking upstream where a group of large shapes could be seen moving. As she raised her rifle to use the scope for a magnified view, her jaw dropped. A group of several stegosaurs could be seen further up the stream, their skin a mixture of green and brown tones which blended in seamlessly with the environment around them. Their plates were enormous, featuring almost light brown-esque stripes, and their faces were adorned with tan and brown patterning. The animals were beautiful, another reminder of the fearsome power of the dinosaurs which now roamed mainland USA. But they weren't what caught Brown's attention the most. As she looked closer, she began to notice a smaller creature between the herd, and eventually it bounded out in front of them, letting out a noise as the adults around it reacted gently, nudging it with their beaks. Brown realized that she was looking at a juvenile Stegosaurus, its smaller shape and profile clearly distinguishable from the adults around it. She reached down to her belt, unclipping her radio and bringing it to her mouth.
Morrison? King? Come in.
Lucy, are you okay?
I'm fine. I found the stegosaurs.
What's your location, Agent Brown?
River. North of Morrison's location.
Copy that. Containment teams will be dispatched as soon as possible.
There's something else. There's a juvenile.
Agent Brown, repeat your last. Did you say juvenile?
Yes, sir. They're breeding.
You have been listening to Tales from a Jurassic World. Ben Morrison, voiced by Jared Ransom. Lucy Brown, voiced by Ashley Friel. Howard King, voiced by Antonio Bustos. Mountain Biker 1, voiced by Jimmy Waldron. Chad, voiced by Sam Phillips. Mountain Biker 3, voiced by Jay Quinzel. Photographer, voiced by Faith Delgado. Intro music by Brooks Leiby. Accompanying music from the Jurassic franchise and Jurassic World Evolution. Sound effects from Epidemic Sound. Written, created and produced by Tom Jurassic. Tales from a Jurassic World follows the US Fish and Wildlife Service as they adapt to dinosaurs in the wild.